All right, guys, before we get into this episode of Weightlifting Academy, which is an interview with Sarah Robles, the 2012, or one of the two 2012 Olympians, two 2012 Olympians, that is hard to say, one of the two 2012 Olympians for the sport of Olympic weightlifting. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that every episode of Weightlifting Academy is brought to you by the 7 Deadly Sins of Olympic Weightlifting. And you can get that for free by going to weightliftingacademy.com. That's weightliftingacademy.com, and just click on the right sidebar. There's a big image that says 7 Deadly Sins of Olympic Weightlifting. It's yours totally free. All you got to do is put your name and email in, and you get it immediately. It is the list of the 7 things that I think you've got to know if you're just starting out in the sport of weightlifting. If you want to get good at the snatch, want to get good at the clean and jerk, these are the things I think you got to know right off the bat. So make sure you go to weightliftingacademy.com, check that out, get your free copy of the 7 Sins of Weightlifting, and, sit back, enjoy this ride with Sarah Robles, Olympian, man. She's going to the Olympics. All right, welcome back to another episode of Weightlifting Academy, the only show dedicated to putting 10,000 new lifters on the platform in 2012. I'm your host, Nick Horton, and who do I got here?
Sarah Robles, 2012 Olympian.
Woo! 2012 Olympian, that's so badass. So I watched you compete at nationals that I guess the Olympic trials for you. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty awesome to check that out, actually. I mean, it was cool all around because there was so much good lifting. I mean, every one of the women there who was in the Olympic trials is obviously a pretty good lifter. So the fact that you came out on top was quite the accomplishment. You really had to hit some big lifts to do it.
Oh, yeah, I did. I was definitely not going to go in there and try to take any chump lifts and assume that I was going to make the team. So,
yeah, pretty awesome. So getting to the point where you are now on an Olympic team, doesn't just happen by accident, right? I mean, this is not magic. It's a long process. Tell me how you got your start in weightlifting, sports in general. Like, why in the world? How did this happen?
Well, sports in general, I was in a PE class in 8th grade.
Okay.
And my PE teacher wanted me to encourage me to get more active, and so I wanted to earn this award called Husky Elite. And so I actually started running and improving my mile and participating in all these activities. And then I finally ended up getting the Husky Elite Award. I was like, yeah, I'm so awesome. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was so neat because I was like the biggest person to get this Husky Elite Award. I was like, those skinny people don't get it.
Nice.
So I got the Husky Elite Award. So I got the Husky Elite Award, and then during the process of doing all this stuff, my PE teacher actually noticed that I was athletic. And he asked me to try out for the track team.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure. And so I'm doing track, and I'm doing all these events, and I'm just terrible at everything. I knock over all the hurdles. I catch up over this. I can't run without feeling this awful feeling in my throat. It's just so bad. But all I could do is throw. And it turns out I was pretty good at it, and I kept throwing. Yeah. And come my freshman year in high school, my coach's wife, she was a former American record holder in weightlifting.
Oh,
and she's like, hey, why don't you just come in and lift? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. And we just moved around the bar.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to be fun. I'm going to lift with my coach's wife. It's going to be awesome. And I was sore for 2 weeks. I was like, F that. I'm never going to do that ever again. I was like, I hate this. But then he started coaching at my school full time, and then he forced me back into weightlifting. And then I started to like it, but then he forced me into competitions.
Okay.
And so 2004, 2005, I competed in the local meets. And so he'd drag me out of my house at 6 o'clock in the morning for weigh-ins, and we'd drive out there, and turns out I really liked it. I was like, I'm going to compete in this one day. Awesome. But I didn't think it'd be as soon as I did, and I didn't think my career would take off. I just thought it was going to be kind of just lifting for fun at first. And then I met Joe in 2008 when I started. Yeah, Joe Michello, when I went to ASU for throwing, and I met him, and he's like, with your lifts, you can medal at junior nationals. I'm like, all right, let's freaking do it. Yeah. So I met him on Thursday. On Sunday, I lifted, and like 2 weeks or so, or 2 months later, it was like junior nationals.
Oh my gosh.
Junior worlds. And then I met Alden, and I was like, I think I'll stick around with this. So I quit track, and then I started pursuing weightlifting full time.
Nice, nice. So you met Joe, your coach there in Arizona, pretty early on then in your career.
In my weightlifting
Your
career.
weightlifting career. I mean, you'd been doing a lot of lifting in other sports and stuff, but when you actually got serious about competing in weightlifting, I mean, it was pretty much right off the bat. You were.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Okay. So you did track for a while. That's interesting. I think that's actually. I guess it's not too abnormal. It seems like a lot of weightlifters come from like a handful of other sports, you know, like dudes come from either like they're too small for football or maybe they're wrestlers and they don't like wrestling around with other guys, and so they move into weightlifting. The women often come from either track or gymnastics or something like that. That seems to be pretty normal. Nowadays, though, there seems to be a lot of people who also do CrossFit.
Right.
And that kind of thing. Do you guys in your gym have a lot of people who do that also, or not?
We don't necessarily do CrossFit in our gym, but we have people who are CrossFitters, and they come in and do technical work with us. Okay, yeah. So we have a girl that comes down from Flagstaff, and we have people that come up from Tucson to come on like Saturdays or something and have like a lift. We have once a month we have like a lift with the lifters day. And so we invite people to come to our gym and lift with us, and then we do technique work with them and stuff like that. So we have a lot of people coming up for technique work. And then they go back to their gyms, and everybody's like, wow, your technique is so good. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how that happened. But we only have, I think, one person she was introduced to weightlifting through CrossFit, but then she just wanted to switch over to weightlifting. Okay. And she has a lot of potential, but she hasn't been in the gym for a couple weeks. But she's really talented.
Oh, okay, great. That's awesome. So give us sort of a breakdown of what. So okay, you did the list for a while on your own. Then you met Joe, and you got serious about competing. Right. Did you go through a period where he was kind of trying to revamp your technique and things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Did you feel pretty confident about how you were when you came in?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a lot of technical flaws because my coach in high school, like, he coached me very well, but I only had a short period of time to work with him. I worked with him for 2 to 3 years in the Olympic lifts. Then I ended up graduating and going to college, and so I had about 3 years without really good technical work. And when you go to college and you're competing in collegiate track and field and you're competing in those different level events, you do variations of the lifts, but they're not very technical, and it's a different type of training. Sure. So I went through a 3 or 4 year period where I wasn't having solid technical training. And so when I met Joe, I ended up developing some bad habits, and I already had bad habits from just being young and unexperienced. Sure. And Joe is very technical. Like he wants perfect technique every single time, and so we did a lot of technical work at the beginning, and it was a little frustrating at first because when you come from different sports backgrounds, they're just like, put weight on there and just freaking lift it or whatever, and that's kind of your idea. You're like, I'm going to work up to this set, and then I want to go heavy and do these kind of things. But then it's like, oh, no, we're just going to take the bar for a few times today. We're going to do this, and then you're just like, oh, the bar is tiring. So we did a lot of technique work, and we still do a lot of technique work. We're doing technique work even right now, even though I'm preparing for the games. Wow. So that's I think something that people who are listening to this can probably take away. I mean, here you are, you're somebody who's actually now on an Olympic team, and you're still doing technique work. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's real. I think that's so important. I think some people get really frustrated in the early phase, especially in that first month, where really almost all you're doing is technique work. Right. You can get so frustrated so easy about wondering, like, man, when do I get to put weight on this bar? Like, I want to lift something heavy and, like, drop something on my head. Yeah, there's a lot of people who either want to do that or they just want to, like, not lift the bar anymore. Like, when I first started, like I said, I quit. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, the bar? I was like, oh, and then I have to put more weights on it. I was like, I don't want to do this. But, I mean, that's just for a short period of time, like that feeling. And then once you get to a point when you're technically sound enough to actually start adding weights, then things start to go a little better and it's a little easier. You just have to stay patient. And that's hard for a lot of people, especially in, I think, American society. Yeah. Like, I want it now, I want it within 30 seconds, I want to be good, and everything's just a quick fix, and it's not a quick fix with weightlifting at all. But but it's well worth the wait, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's setting your foundation so that in the long run you can actually fulfill some of your own potential, which is not possible, obviously, if you have the wrong technique. One of the things I like about the sport is that it's not just a strength sport.
Right.
I like that it's also, actually a lot of the field sports and track and field are the same way, right? Where you have a high threshold of athleticism you need, depending on whatever it is, but you also just need very technical skills.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, for, like, in the throwing events in track and field, yeah, they want to get the big, strong guy or whatever, but if he's all doofy and he doesn't know how to move his body or her body, or they're not athletic, they're just big, I mean, you have to work on those technical skills to give you that foundation to succeed later on. Absolutely. You can't just rely on the body that you have. You have to actually work on the things that are necessary to be good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important advice, and a lot of people want to be able to snatch and clean and jerk more, which is kind of cool. I mean, now we live in an era where the internet has made snatching and cleaning something that people know about.
Oh, yeah.
Which they didn't know about before.
No.
And now I think the new thing is helping people understand what it actually takes to do that. Right. One of which is, just patience. It's really that simple.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes we got to be realistic, too. Like, we had this guy that came into the gym one day, and he's like, I'm going to give up my full-ride scholarship in football, and I want to become an Olympian. And I was like, okay, good luck. So
that is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, right? And so I'm clean and jerking. He's like, well, yeah, if you want to make the Olympic team, you got to clean and jerk more than Sarah. Okay. If you want to be an Olympian, you have to squat more than Sarah, and I've squatted like 180 or whatever for double. He's like, okay. So, like, we never saw the kid ever again. So then you have those people that are just like, yeah, I'll be an Olympian. The Olympics next year, no big deal. I'll just sign up right now, and we'll make the team. Like, no, dude, you need, like, experience. You need more than just to show up, which some people don't get sometimes.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So, speaking of squatting and snatching and these things, what's the difference between how your program in the gym regularly looks now versus how it was when you first started? Like, can you get kind of a basic on, like, when you first were starting, say with Joe?
Right.
Odds are, I'm guessing your program was somewhat different than it is now.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was different. When I first met Joe, what we were doing was gearing our training towards track and field.
Okay.
And so, because I was already doing track full-time and school, and then I was using Joe's training to supplement what I was doing. And then we started doing it more full-time because I had a junior world team to prepare for. And so we were preparing for the the junior world championships and stuff. And so we were going more towards lifting heavier weights at that time. Mm-hmm. But when you're younger and when you're first beginning, it's more important, we feel, to develop overall athleticism and conditioning and basic physical skills that everybody needs. So I was doing like one-legged sit-downs onto a box, and I was doing like different plyos and agility and just different overall normal conditioning that everybody should just have.
Right.
And then we were doing a lot of technique work, and then later on it developed into less of the overall general physical preparation into actual athletic performance.
Gotcha.
And so right now a lot of when I'm further away from a competition, it's more kind of the GPP kind of stuff where I'm doing agility ladder, a lot of box jumps, and I'm doing like right now I'm going out for walks every day to help condition myself for all the walking that's going to be at the Olympic Games. So
So just get used to the fact that you have to actually walk every day a lot there.
I call it my walk of shame. Because I feel so embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because you think like, oh, this girl's an Olympian. She doesn't have to practice walking.
Yeah, unless you're in the walking sport.
Right, exactly. So, but what's funny is like people don't realize sometimes just like the basic things. Like weightlifting, like you squat up and down and then you sit down. Or you snatch and then you sit down. There's no actual like, pedestrian transportation, like involved at all. But when you go to the Olympic Games, there's going to be a lot of walking involved because we went to the Excel Center, and it's huge. Okay. And so you're just walking and walking for 20 minutes just to get to the venue, on top of getting to the train station, on top of going to the cafeteria, on top of doing all these things. So that's one of the things that we have to prepare for. So that's one of the parts of my conditioning right now is we're doing a lot of the GPP plus walking, and then we're doing a lot of technique work. And now we're going to start, right now I'm at the end of one of my cycles, so this is a down week, and then we'll start working our way up into doing heavier intensity stuff, gearing more towards competition. So we'll have days where we're simulating competition, or we're doing waves, or we're doing longer breaks, shorter breaks between sets or between reps, or between exercises. So when it gets closer to the competition, sometimes we'll do our snatches, and then we'll take like a 10 to 20 minute break between the snatches and the clean and jerk, and then start our clean and jerks. Okay. So the difference between then and now is then was I was doing more general physical preparation and just developing my body overall, and now it's more specific to what I'm doing and where I'm going to be competing.
Okay, that's really fascinating. So something you talked about there a little bit that I want to touch on, something that maybe is new to people who are not used to weightlifting training or just very sport-specific training, and maybe they've just been doing CrossFit or something like that, which a lot of people in the audience are in that group, is the idea of a down week.
Right.
Like, you kind of go through these phases, right, and then you go through a down week, and then you go through a phase, and you go through a down week. Can you kind of explain the methodology like that you guys are using there, why you do this, where you kind of ramp things up, and then you kind of go down, and you ramp things up, and you go down, and why you don't just kind of go for it all the time?
One of the reasons is because I think there's two reasons. Mostly it's because of mental fatigue.
Okay.
Secondly, it's physical fatigue.
Okay.
I've trained for super heavyweight. I can handle an unusual amount of volume.
Okay.
But if we're cranking it out, we're doing volume, and doing all this work, by the time 7 to 8 weeks come, I crash and burn, and I'm useless.
Okay.
And I've gotten to the point where I'm just so tired and so fatigued that I just I can't control myself. I'm just like, oh, I just want to cry, and I'm sitting there just like my friend's like, Sarah, you're usually so bubbly and laughing, and now I look at you and you're doing this. Like, in the corner. So you can only handle so much sometimes physically and mentally, and other times, so that's more me mentally. I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. It drives me crazy. And then the physical part is like sometimes you end up developing tendinitis, overuse injuries, and sometimes you're just so fatigued from the amount of volume or the intensity that you're doing that you're not able to apply a proper technique, and then you can increase your potential to get injury, and you don't want that. And so just from the basis of letting your body heal so you're not injured, is a good thing. I mean, you want to heal your body so you can continue to elongate the longevity of your career. I mean, you don't want to go full steam ahead and crash and burn and be done.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, that's really important. I think that making sure your training relates well to your natural fatigue cycles is pretty important. Do you guys then have very well planned those?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you guys planning out quite a bit in advance these cycles?
Yeah,
or do you
we haven't gotten to sit down and talk about the specific details, but what we're doing is we're working backwards.
Okay.
So we're starting with the Olympic Games, and then we work our cycles backwards, and then we alter for any like training camps or events that I have coming up.
Yeah. But
we have certain goals and stuff like that set up for each cycle.
Okay.
So like the cycle before the Olympic trials, my coach is like, I want you to be able to hit 10 at least like 10 times or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was hitting like 10, 12, 15, 18, like all these various numbers that were 10 and above. That way, by the time I went to the Olympic trials, I was going to be ready to open up with 110.
I see.
So we have everything's planned out roughly. I mean, you have to make changes. You can't just like have a blanket statement and good luck. You either make it or you don't.
Yeah. You
have to make alterations sometimes, but we have our general idea of what we want to accomplish, and then we have smaller goals of the reps that we want to make, the weights that we want to make, and our just overall conditioning. Like, I want you to be able to squat like 5 reps in this amount of time, or I want you to be able to take this many sets without dying, and just like keep going. It's like we're doing a lot of volume right now.
Yeah.
And so we have goals of just we've done like 120 kilo clean and jerks for 6 doubles.
Okay.
And then we worked our way into doing like 125, for 3 doubles, and it was 4 doubles. And now we're going to be doing it for more doubles, and so we're conditioning, but we're also conditioning and working our way up into lifting heavier weights, and then we're going to flip it around. So that way I'm conditioned, like, I know I can hit, if it comes down to it, if I have to go in the back, I could take a lighter weight and still be able to come up on stage and not be, like, completely exasperated and be able to still take that heavy attempt.
Okay.
Because sometimes you're going to have this long break in competition.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Go in the back and lift a weight. That way your body's still moving, so you're not your body's not asleep by the time you have to go lift.
Yeah.
And then you go lift, and you're not completely exhausted.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, very important too, because that's something that I think people who maybe if you've not competed before, but you're thinking about it, the difference in the environment in a contest versus what it's like in the gym can be substantial. Right. And if you're not prepared for that, that alone will negatively affect your competition performance.
Oh yeah, I think so too. And sometimes like ignorance is bliss when you're in a first competition. Like, okay, you sit there, I lift the weight, you lift it. Okay, no big deal. Don't worry about anything. But I think as you compete at a higher and higher level, I think competition experience is more important. Especially like if you're going to go to your first national championships, I think it's important to start mimicking what's going to happen in competition. So like, okay, well, you missed your first lift. Okay, well, we'll put you on a 2-minute clock. Okay, and then you have to follow yourself again. Or you made your first lift, but somebody else takes an attempt, so you have to wait a while. So you kind of simulate the amount of time where you rest, or the amount of reps that you have to take, or if you have to take a down set and do waves. So it's important to simulate those things. So when you go into competition, you're like, okay, I've done this before. I'm supposed to lift up with 95 kilos, but I have a wild weight, so I'm going to go back down to 90 kilos and then work my way back up. So I'm ready to hit that weight when it comes time. Yeah, I think what a lot of Americans are missing when it comes time to competition is experience with competition. So even though I'm young and I'm not as seasoned as a lot of these other lifters in weightlifting, I've competed at a high level in track and field for quite a number of years beforehand. So even though it wasn't necessarily weightlifting, I had those years of experience. Okay, I'm gonna have to wait this long. It's raining or this kind of stuff. I have the ability to adapt and use those skills that I learned from another sport to apply here.
And the fact that was an individual sport is also...
Yes, and that it was an individual sport. A lot of people, I think, too, have a hard time coming from a team sport to an individual sport, knowing that all their results rely on them, or that all of a sudden everybody's just looking at you. They're not looking at, like, a bunch of people. Yeah. So those are just kind of things that your coach should help prepare you for. And sometimes even have little mock meets in your competition. Okay, we're gonna have three weights that we hit today. Yeah. You have a 95, 100, over 100%. Okay, we're gonna try for PR, and then we're gonna wait a little bit and have a clean and jerk day. Yeah. If you simulate those things in practice, by the time you get to competition, it's not exactly the same, but it'll be a lot easier of a transition.
At least you have some connection there in your mind. Like I've done something before. Yeah, absolutely. That's really important. So that's great stuff. How much people like specifics? So like what kind of like you had to kind of break it down in terms of percentages of your amount of time spent on different lifts. Do you guys spend a substantial amount of time, say, on like strength work, like squats and pulls and other things like that, or do you spend a pretty good amount of time on your Olympic lifts? Is it different for you than it is for a lot of the people who are in the gym, etc.?
It depends on what your needs are, and it depends on what you're doing. So a lot of people in our gym are here for sports performance. So they're using Olympic lifts as part of their training. So they already have their training, what they're already doing. Plus they're doing the Olympic lifts because we're trying to develop power, flexibility, strength, all those kinds of things. But then we also incorporate a lot of conditioning drills. So they're doing the agility ladder, they're running, they're doing tire slams, they're doing a lot of other kind of stuff. But it just depends on what your need is. And so for our lifters, I'm preparing for the Olympic Games, and then we have Colinito who's preparing for the World University Games coming up, and then we have our other guys that just came back from the Collegiate Nationals. Yeah. So each person has their own individual needs. Like for example, I have strength stores, right? So I'm already strong enough. I just need to work more on my technique and my confidence. Okay. Because sometimes the only thing that's going to hold you back really from success is yourself. So I got to work on stuff in my mind that says, yes, sir, you're not tired enough, you can make this weight, okay? You can work through it, you can do these kinds of things. So for me, I'm more mentally training as well as working on my technique because, sometimes because you're strong, you get away with having bad technique sometimes. So we're working on different things for me versus Colin. Colin will get in the bottom of a snatch, but then he'll shift forward on his toes. Okay, well, we have to work on catching the bar at different locations for you. So he'll be doing powers or half catches or stuff like that. So Keith and Craig, they have leg strength issues. They have good technique because they have to because they're not as strong. So then they have to work on strength. So every athlete has their own needs that need to be addressed. But we do a lot of, the majority of our lifts are mostly snatches and clean and jerks and their variants. So we'll be doing snatch pulls, clean pulls, snatches from different positions, those kinds of things, as well as front squats and back squats. Like right now I'm doing a lot of deadlifts and things from the hang. So I told Joe, I really want to have a really strong back. I want anything that I pick up off that floor to feel easy. Yeah. So I'm deadlifting 180 for doubles and just I'm just deadlifting a storm right now and I'm doing all this stuff from the hang. So when it comes time when I have to snatch 120 or I have to clean and jerk 150, I'm like, dude, I just freaking deadlifted 200 yesterday. 150 is not gonna feel like anything. And so sometimes it's all about what the athlete needs for their minds and for their bodies. So for me, I feel like if I have more pulling power from the floor, I already know I'm going to be able to stand up with weight. I just got to get it over my head, or onto my shoulders. So that's what we're working on.
That's really fascinating. So I actually want to kind of touch on that a little bit because I think it's really important. The kind of training you do physically affects what's going on mentally a lot of times.
Right.
So, with for instance, like you said, deadlifts off the floor, like really heavy clean pulls or really heavy snatch pulls that are above your actual snatch clean. That does help a lifter who gets psyched out when the weight feels heavy off the floor.
Right.
So sometimes it's not that they're not strong enough. It's that their brain's telling them, oh my gosh, this snatch or clean feels really heavy off the floor.
Right.
And that makes them stop using good technique.
Yeah,
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It makes you not even want to lift it. Because you're like, there's no effing way. Like when I was at trials, I missed my second clean and jerk because I was just my first lift, I had so many butterflies. I had butterflies throughout my whole body, and I was just so nervous. I was like, oh, please, God, please let me make this lift. And I, lifted. I just lifted out of prayer,
Yeah.
And then my second one, I was just so excited. I was like, okay, good. I made that one, and I rushed it, and I pushed it too far out, and I had there was no way I was going to crank it back.
Yeah.
But then on my third one, I pull it from the floor, and I get it to mid-shin. I'm like, nope, not making it. Because, it felt so slow. It felt like a deadlift. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no freaking way I'm going to make this. And when you have that in training or you have that in competition, you can't have that thought. You can't think, I'm not going to freaking make this lift, because if you think that, then your subsequent lifts, you're not going to think that either, and you're already messing up your whole day.
Yeah.
And so that at that point in that competition, I was like, I don't want to ever feel that again. I want to know when I pick it up from that floor, it's going over my head. I want it without a doubt. So I think the mental side of training is just as important or more so than it is physical. Because my body is, my body and pretty much anybody's body is so much more capable of what you think it is. And we hold ourselves back a lot.
Yeah.
So we just have to work on confidence, and a lot of confidence is going to come from our physical preparation as well.
Yeah.
So they're both interconnected in their ways.
Right, they're not totally separate things. I think that's really common to think about it that way. Maybe you do mental training stuff on your own, meditating or whatever, and then over here, or you're doing your physical training, but they're not really connected, and people don't see the connection. And in reality, the act of doing this one thing over here in your physical training and doing it well will carry over to your mental stuff.
Oh yeah, I had it was last week. I was just talking to my teammate about this. I was doing 3 snatch high pulls and then 3 snatches from above the knee. And so by the time it came to snatches above the knee, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And the lighter sets at 90 kilos were fine. And then all of a sudden 95, no, that's good. And I was I was so exhausted and out of breath.
Yeah.
That I didn't think I was going to have enough pulling power to be able to get underneath the weight.
Sure.
So I was missing my snatches, missing, and I was doing all these high pulls and then missing my snatches. I'm like, I'm doing all these high pulls for no reason. Like, I'm not making my lifts. And I just finally, like, I just lost my mind. I was like, I'm going to freaking get this. And you know what? If I want it bad enough, I'm going to make it. And I made it with want. And it was like an hour later, after doing all these ridiculous amounts of pulls and misses,
Wow. Yeah.
that because you wanted it enough, because I finally let down that barrier and just let myself just go after it, then I managed to finally be able to make those weights. And I learned a lot that day, just to show that I was physically capable of doing that. I just didn't believe it at first.
Right.
You know, and if you really have to believe it more so than anything.
Yeah, that belief is the important part.
It's Arizona and it's hot. Sorry, I had to turn on the fan.
Yeah, that belief idea is really the key, I think, to so much of the success in a sport that's so mentally dependent. You know, in many respects, Olympic lifting is more of a mental sport than a physical sport, even though there's certainly a lot of physical stuff that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not uncommon to snatch 50 kilos with beautiful form and then miss 60 kilos with the most ugly, hideous I've ever seen. Like, that is so normal.
Really?
You know, people can easily get to the point where they can do... It doesn't take that long to get pretty decent technique with weight that you think of as light.
Right.
What's hard is then being able to do the same technique when the bar is heavy enough to scare you a little.
Mm-hmm. And you're just like, no, I can't do it. And
Yeah,
you're
like, oh my God, that is heavy. That is insane. There's no way that's going over my head.
Mm.
And just like you said, that belief or that faith in yourself that, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah.
It completely changes your mindset, and all of a sudden you go from being freaked out and your body just can't follow through to being able to put all the same technique into practice on a heavy weight. And oh, look at that! It's like Harry Potter, like it magic.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it is actually kind of funny with the snatch. I think of it, it almost is like a magic moment. You know, when you hit that pull just right, and that bar comes off your hip. There's like this, it happens so fast, sometimes you're almost shocked, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're under that weight, and you're like, how did that get up there?
I had one jerk, and I had jerked the crap out of it, and all of a sudden it was behind me. And I was like, where'd it go? Where'd it go? You know, because like, I had never been able to put that much drive into it, and it does surprise you.
Yeah.
And like when that jerk behind me, I was like, what the heck? I've never had that happen before. Like, where did it go? And we've had lifters like Colin will lift something. He's like, I wasn't expecting it to be that easy. Like,
yeah.
And Joe goes crazy. He's like, you should always expect that you're going to make that lift. You know, you're physically trained. You should be trained to the point that when your coach asks you to put something on the bar, you should be ready to do it. Because you have all this training leading up to it. You know, you're prepared for it. I mean, they're not going to...
Body can do it. It's whether or not your mind believes that.
Exactly. Like, you're going to send a soldier out to war, but it's not like you didn't go throughout training, you know, to prepare them for that moment. They're not going to send, like, 5-year-olds out there that know what they're doing. Right. They have people that are prepared and trained for this. And it's just the same thing as in training. You know, like, your coach is going to ask you to put 61 kilos on there versus 60. You're prepared to do it. Sometimes you just don't think that you are.
Sure, yeah.
That's
so. I think that if you know, you can take anything away from, you know, the discussion so far, I would say it is that getting your mind around what's happening in your training is the key. That physical stuff, you know, everybody's got different programs. You go to a different gym, they're gonna have a different program than the other guy at the other gym. But there's a couple of key basics that are always true. Like, people care about technique. They care about, you know, obviously you have to be strong enough. And you also have to have a strong brain and mind.
Oh, yeah. And you'll see the difference between a lot of people who are just going to be, you know, weightlifters or Olympic athletes. Like, the difference between the average people and then the above average people is the mind. And, you know, like, the mental fortitude. You know, and that's what I really, you know, a lot of people are all these, you know, big fans of all these crazy lifters. one of the reasons I enjoyed Donnie Schenkel so much. I'm not a fan of anybody in particular. I'm not a fan. But one of the things I really like about him is that he's not afraid to get after it, and he's willing to he really is just willing to get after it. Like, when we were at the World Championships, I think he took an attempt at, I'm going to say, was it 210, 220? I don't know. It was some obscene amount of weight for Donnie.
Yeah.
He was in the back for 30 minutes between his second and his third attempt. And he came out, and I was like, I'm going to lose my effing mind if he freaking clean and jerks it.
Wow.
He cleaned it. He jerked it, but missed it behind. And I was like, oh my gosh! I was losing my mind. But the fact that he was able to do that. Now, had I sat down in the back for 30 minutes, would I be able to come out and attempt such a huge weight? Like, that would be, like, say, the equivalent of me clean jerking, like, 155 or 160 or something like that. Would I have been able to do that? I don't know. But that's what I admire about these high-level athletes, is the fact that they can block that stuff out. They have the confidence that they can do this. And that's what I feel like that separates a lot of... I think a lot of people can work on it. You know, it's not a skill that you're born with. I mean, it's something that you can work on. And a lot of people, I'll never get to that level. And I'm like, you know what? How do you know?
Yeah,
do you
try?
If you fix your mind, you never know what you can freaking do, you know?
Oh,
so that's your mind is just a crazy thing. It really is. It really is the determining factor with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Especially in athletics.
Right. That's fantastic. Speaking of that kind of stuff, you've also, getting slightly outside of athletics, you've also been a big proponent of, like, some women's issues and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things about body image, the mental stuff about, like, not necessarily feeling good about themselves for whatever reason it is, or you've also talked about how a lot of kids get picked on for lots of different kinds of reasons, or in certain blog posts you've done. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're trying to help promote, like, the positive side of some of this stuff?
What I hope to accomplish with my athletic career and my personality and things that I'm doing is I hope to use weightlifting as a tool to help educate people on bad body image, and use athletics as a way to build confidence and as a way to not necessarily look better, but to feel better, to be better, to accomplish more than you could have. And what I like about weightlifting is that it's literally for all ages of people. You have little kids, you have old people, and you have, you know, little girls that weigh 48 kilos, and you have girls that weigh, like me, like 265, 275 and more. And the same thing with the guys. You have 56 kilo guys, and you have super heavyweights. So it's literally for everybody. And that's what I love about it. It's just so welcoming. You know, you'll go for football. Oh, you're not 6 foot tall. Oh, you're not, 298 pounds. You're not going to be good at football. Gymnastics. Oh, you're 17? You're done. You know, just a lot of these different sports, there's so many different factors that can eliminate you. But in weightlifting, you know, that's not a factor. You can lift at any age. You can lift at any body, at any body size. Weightlifting has really helped me with a lot of my confidence issues. I was bullied a lot in school because I was always the bigger girl. I was always a lot taller than my teachers for the most part, and I was also a lot bigger. You know, I got bullied at school. My brother teased me. You know, some of my family members, you know, they even said negative things. So it was almost like I felt like I couldn't escape it. You know, because you go to school and you get made fun of, and then you come home, and then your brother would make fun of you, or something like that, you know? And so by the time I got into sports and I started getting good at them, a lot of the people that used to pick on me stopped picking on me. And a lot of that was because they're afraid of me. But regardless, they stopped making fun of me, and that was nice. Or some people like the people that used to bully me or whatever in, like, middle school, I actually trained with them, like, because they were in football. I was in football strength and conditioning in high school, and so I was trained with all the football players. This is the only girl in there, and then we became friends, or we got a chance to actually get to know each other instead of him just seeing me or seeing this person. He got to know me a little bit better. So I hope that with my story or with my career that I can educate people to promote health, promote weightlifting, and just promote, you know, overall better body image. Because a lot of people, they view that their size or their gender or whatever they think of is an inhibitor. Like, okay, well, if I weren't this tall, would I have been a good thrower? No, probably not.
Right.
But if I wasn't throwing, I would have gotten introduced to weightlifting, and I would be on the Olympic team. You know, and so I was given this body for a specific reason. You know, your body's not going to be necessarily good for everything, and you know what? Sometimes you might not even be athletic, but what talents do you have?
Yeah.
Develop those, you know? And really, I want to encourage people to just develop their talents regardless of what they are and feel better about themselves. Because nobody should ever hate themselves the way that I ever felt about myself. I felt a lot of bad, dark, terrible things about myself, and nobody should ever have to feel that way. And I really want it to stop.
Yeah.
You know, I want people to, like, when you look on Shape Magazine, I'm in shape. I'm not in your shape. I'm a different shape.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm still in shape. You know, I want to, you know, educate people and let them know that it's not what's on the outside. You may be really, really big, but, okay, is it subcutaneous fat or is it visceral fat?
Yeah.
Okay, what does your blood work look like? What is your actual health? You know, what do the doctors say versus what the magazines say? You know, what the fashion models say, you know? So I hope to just break down those barriers and just really make sure that people just feel really good about themselves.
That's really fantastic, and it is very important, especially given that, you know, there's a lot of great things about, you know, what we've got going on in the United States because we have more money than other countries and we have a lot more access to certain things that other people in other countries do. The downside is that obviously we have a hyper image obsessed society, a hyper image obsessed society.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about the fact that weightlifting is becoming so much more popular now is that it's a sport based on what you can lift, period. You know, relative to people who look like you or who are in the same, you know, if you're in a certain weight class and a certain age group and a certain gender, then everybody in your weight class, age class, gender class is really similar to you. And there's only people you're competing against. Not competing against anybody else.
Right, and that's what I really like about it too, except for international teams.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's really nice. It's good too because each weight class kind of has their things that they, for example, deal with. Like the super heavyweights are going to have their things like, oh, my clothes don't fit. Oh my gosh, like so-and-so newspaper said this about me or whatever. You know, like because Holly and I have talked and like, oh, they always say that I weigh some obscene amount of weight, or they say these mean things about me. They don't know me, you know. But at the same time, you know, like, okay, well, I go through the same things, and we have our support group. And then you're going to have the 48-kilo girls like, oh, I've been starving for a week to make weight. You know, it's so like, even though we're all in the same sport, we have people in our respective weight classes that we can all relate to, which is really cool. And even throughout the weight classes, the fact that we all have weightlifting and we have competition to all relate us. We're all different in our own aspects and our backgrounds and everything, but then we all have commonalities at the same time, which makes making friends in weightlifting really easy. And because our sport is relatively small, we make strong friendships too. You know, like Erin Wallace is a really good friend of mine in Shreveport, and she's not in my weight class. I've never competed against her and all that kind of stuff, but we're still really good friends because I don't know, we just hit it off really well. And that's the same thing for a lot of people. You have friendships for life, you know, like Jack and Jack, they're both from California. It's like this heavier old guy and this little small old guy, and they're like 90-something years old, and they've been friends and they've been lifting for a really, really long time. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could be like that with Erin Wallace in like 60 years, that'd be so awesome. You know,
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important. Message, and also a good, you know, it's a good, I guess, you know, example of how weightlifting can really cross some boundaries for people. So people that you might not otherwise expect to be hanging out in the same room end up hanging out in the same room because of that. Like, it's one of the few sports too where men and women often train together. That's something I always find interesting. Like growing up, all of my close friends were almost always women. Like I just related to them more and things like that, and so like I always felt really uncomfortable in a lot of the sports that were available to me because I'd just be training with nothing but dudes all the time, and I just have always felt a little bit more confident and comfortable hanging out with girls. I don't know why. And it's kind of cool that in weightlifting, you know, like you're actually surrounded by both. Like people tend,
Right.
it's not like so differentiated, at least not in our country. In a lot of other countries it is, but in our country,
Yeah.
you know, the clubs are pretty small. There's usually not
Mhm.
that many people on each team, you know,
Mhm.
so everybody ends up all training and hanging out together. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's cool because there is a very strong family vibe that ends up happening
Mhm.
with American weightlifting.
Oh, yeah,
And
definitely.
that's really cool. And I agree with you. Like, it's real easy to make friends in weightlifting across the
Mhm.
board. That was one of the things that hooked me right off the bat. When I first competed in weightlifting, I was like, man, everybody here at this contest is super nice and really cool. And that was not the case in some other sports that I tried out.
Maybe because weightlifting is so small, they're like, yes, a new person.
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
I'll make you cookies.
Yeah,
Anything.
please stay. Yeah.
Wait, the store is locked. I can't get out.
Right. Don't let them leave.
You will be artist forever.
So, how does how is it like now? I mean, now you became an Olympian relatively recently. You're somebody who's going to the Olympics. You know, you're on the Olympic team. How has it been at home? Like, you know, what's the reaction been in your hometown and with the friends and everything like that? To now that they know somebody. I mean, not everybody knows somebody who is going to the Olympics. That's pretty rare.
I don't even know, like, who knows. but my family is really, really excited because my cousin was like, you don't make the team, you're ruining our vacation because we're planning on going to London. Okay, so you better make the team. But my family is really excited, and all my family and friends back home are really behind me. I feel like a lot of people are on Team Robles, and that's really good. And my reception out here in Arizona has been pretty good. I mean, I don't have a lot of outside friends, but I do go to church every Sunday. And my bishop had me go up and was like, I do believe Sarah Robles has an announcement. I'm like, ugh. So I had to go up and like, hi, I made the Olympic team. Then everybody was like, yeah, and everybody was really excited. So it's nice to know that I do have people on my side. I don't feel like any different. I don't feel like Sarah Robles is like this magic Olympic fairy dust off here or something. Like, I feel exactly the same. But I'm really excited for the opportunity to represent the United States on the Olympic platform, and I'm very excited just for the whole experience, just to meet new people, to learn about new sports, to see what the Olympics is all about. You know, everybody says that it's for solidarity and all these things, and I really want to see that in action versus hearing about it. You know, the Olympics has always been like a big part of my life, and my history of being like a person. So I think it's really interesting that now I actually get to partake in it. You know, you get to watch the Olympics. Like last year, we were at NMU, we were watching it on TV, and we're like, oh, there's Cheryl, there's Carissa, there's so-and-so. We were so excited to watch it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for somebody to say that about me now. Like, be really excited to have me represent them and represent Team Robles and, you know, all the people that put in all the hard work and effort. So I'm really excited about a lot of things.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. That's really cool. Laura, I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit. We're getting near the hour mark, but you know, I'll definitely be rooting for you. I'm totally excited for you. Also, I think it's pretty fantastic that you have gotten this far.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, people don't know this, but you actually haven't been doing dedicated Olympic lifting training for as long as some people are by the time they get to that point. So that's actually pretty.
Right. Yeah, I've only been in it probably about a third of the time that most people have.
Yeah. I mean, that, you know, obviously there's, you know, people can always say, well, good genes, things like that, and that's true, but like we said before, the mental aspect is what allows you to actually go and fulfill your potential. And
oh yeah,
that's why at this point you're where you are, is because you've taken seriously all of that kind of stuff, and you really have put in the work, you put in the training on both your body and your mind, and that is something inspirational, I think, to everybody in the audience. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
All right. So I will put, let's see, a link to Performance One, the club that you train with,
okay.
and on the site weightliftingacademy.com. So if you're listening to this, go to weightliftingacademy.com and check out the show notes so that you can see the facility that she trains at and where she's put in all the work. And we'll all be watching you, and I'd love to have you back on after you get back.
Definitely.
Awesome.
I will see you. Thank you so much.
Sarah.